Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Trixie Dominguez from Bised English 3B. My topic is Literary Movements, New York School. For my objective, by the end of these lessons, you will be able to understand what is literary movements, to know what are some poetry in New York School, and to learn more about how to write poems in New York School. To my introductions, the New York School refers to a group of experimental painters and a coterie of associated poets who live and work in downtown Manhattan in 1950s and 60s. So it is a unique mainstream culture references. The poets of the school didn't name themselves a school rather than a movement and held much distaste with that classification. The artistic branch of the movement modernized abstract painting called actions painting, in which they sometimes use New York School poets to help their emotions. So the schools played a key role in the gay rights expressionist movements of 60s because all of the headlining poets were gay, and their work gave insights and inspirations to the idea that being gay was a social identity and a form of expressions for the emerging LGBTQ community. So what is literary movements? Literary movements is a way to divide literature into categories of similar philosophical, topical, or aesthetic features as opposed to divisions by genre or period. Like other categorizations, literary movements provide language for comparing and discussing literary work. So, it is marked by shared traits of style, subjects, and literary genre. It begins in the early modernized, after the Renaissance, and help categorize authors and literary works that share similar philosophies, aesthetics, and topics. So, literary movements, New York School. Similarly, the New York School was not an academic institution, but rather a community built on proximity, relationships, and similarities in styles, method, and subject matter. So, though stylistic diversity existed within a group, New York School poetry tended to be a witty, urbane, and conversational. The poets allowed everyday moments, pop culture, humor, and spontaneity into their work, seeking to capture life as it happened. New York School poets. Inspiration derived from surrealism and abstract expressionist painting. Rejections of the dominant school of confessional, deeply influenced by the action painters of 1950s and 1960s. So it was influenced by surrealism and abstract expressionist painting. They responded to the events of the day without embracing the heavy seriousness characteristic of some post-war intellectuals. The New York School of Poets is often organized into two generations. In the first generations, we have John Ashbery, Barbara Guest, James Schuyler, Kenneth Coe, and Frank O'Hara. While on the second generation, we have Alice Notley and her husband Ted Berrigan, Bill Brickson, and Ron Praget. So, when we say first generation, in the first generation, the New York School poets collaborated and socialized with abstract expressionist painters, while on the second generations, it is found inspiration in the burgeoning pop art movement and arose during 1960s. So we have some examples of New York School literature. And one of those is Why I Am Not a Fainter by Frank O'Hara. I am not a fainter. I am a poet. Why? I think I would rather be a painter, but I am not well. For instance, Mike Goldberg is starting a painting. I drop in, sit down, and have a drink. He says, I drink, we drink. Look up, you have sardines in it. Yes, it needed something there. Oh, I go and the days go and I drop in again. The painting is going on and I go and the days go by. I drop in. The painting is finished. Where's sardines? All that's left just letters. It was too much Mike says. But me, one day I am thinking of a color orange. I write a line about orange pretty soon. It is a whole page of words, not times. Then another page. There should be so much more, not of orange, of words, of how terrible orange and life. Days go by. It's even in a prose I am real poet. My poem is finished and I haven't mentioned orange yet. It's 12 poems, I call it orange. And one day in the gallery, I see Mike's paintings called Sardines. So, and the poem Why I'm Not a Fainter is one of the most important poems of the New York School, particularly in the first generations of the writers. And this poem was inspired by O'Hara's experience with painters in New York. The poet used simple and easy to read language that allows readers from all walks of life to enjoy his expressions of his own is, artistic qualities. And the theme of this poem is all about the innovator, modern and creative artist, crucified by the traditional and conventional people. And the message of this is O'Hara was used as why I'm not a painter in an attempt to define the differences between painters and poets, but in the end, he appears to reveal more about their similarities. The second one is Hard Times by John Ashbery. Trust me, the world is run on a shoestring. They have no time to return the calls in hell and pay deeply for those wasted minutes. Somewhere in the future, it will filter down through all the proceedings. But then it will be too late. The festive ambience will linger on, but it won't matter. More or less succinctly, they will tell you what you have all known for years. The power of this climate is only to conserve itself. Whatever twists around it, decorations and can never be looked as something isolated apart. Get in, and he flashed a mouthful of aluminum sheet during the darkness to sell however it gets down, that it does not at last. Once they made great trip to California and came out of the flash. And now every day will have to dispel the notions of being like all the others. In time it gets stunned with the wind, but then the night is closed up. So Hard Times by John Ashbery is it also the first generations of poets, considered to be one of the most influential writers in the New York School, is John Ashbery. And he published Hard Times in the Shadow Train in 1981. He described the modern world and what Ashbery in its future. Ashbery used conversational and confident tone. He asked readers to trust his judgment on the world, particularly in the regard to the fact that it is running off its limited resource. So the theme of this is mortality, modernity, life, feminism, and anxiety. Third, Wrong Train by Ted Brigham. Here comes the man. He's talking a lot. I'm sitting by myself. I've got a ticket to right outside is out of a lunch. It's no great pleasure being onto the mate. Well, who is? Or well, everyone is too. I'm lying there. Some guy comes up and hits me with a billy club. A fat guy says, "Shut up!" And like once we cross a river. Into the afterlife, everything goes on as before. But never does any single experience make total use of you. You are always slightly ahead, slightly behind. It merely baffles if doesn't hurt. It's total pain and it breaks your heart in a less than interesting way. Every day is a payday, never enough faith. A debut that lasts is no big thing anyway. A lukewarm, whiskey, hamburger, ice-cold Pepsi that hurts your teeth. So, in Wrong Train, it is also the part of second generation and connects a speaker experiences while waiting for a train to the afterlife, and he presents this idea with a vivid imaginary. Last is October by Vilbrickson. It's odd to have a separate month. It escaped the year. It is not only cold, it is warm. and loving like a death grip on a willing knee. The Indians have a name for it. They call it summer. The tip shakes in the blast like rooster at dawn. Everything is special to them, the colorful ones. Somehow the housewife does not seem gentle. Is she angry because her husband likes October? Is it snows blessed softly from her shoes that Nice eggs have captured here? But April rises from her bed. The beggars are upon us, cried Chester. 3 strangers appear at the doors, demanding ribbons the October with Ness. Why do I think October is beautiful? It is not. It is not beautiful. But then, what is there to hold one's interest between the various drips of day's works? But the search of the difference, the window and great. But it is not beautiful. I think your face is beautiful. The way it is close to my face. And I think you are the real October with your transference and the tone of your words as they fast as I do hear them. So October is also the second generations. And this poem is one of the Bill Brixton's earliest poem. Shows a keen observation side. Note, abstract expressionist art was also major influence, and the New York School poets have a strong relationship with artists. So these are the examples of abstract expressionists of the artists, the poets, which they have find this art to have an idea to write the poetry. So this is the abstract expressionist painting which they have inspired to write their certain poem on that period. So the first one is Jackson Pollock number 8 detail. It is abstract expressionism. Next is Robert Motherwell Untitled. And last is William de Kooning, which is The Fire Island. So, how do you write a New York School poem? So, in most cases, a New York School poem uses straightforward and easy to read language. You might choose to describe contemporary events that you've seen for yourself and the impact of that they had on your community. Refer to pop culture, use humor, and include witty statements. For the conclusions, the impact of the New York School has been wide and varied. This group has been considered the precursor to various postmodern movements in poetry, especially language poetry. In particular, the notions that anything in life is material for a poem, ranging from pop culture, image, and events to daily thoughts and routines emerged with the poetry of New York School. So, the New York School seemed comfortable using a collage of thoughts, actions, and details from their daily experience in ways that be surreal and comply or direct and straightforward. Ultimately, the poetry of the New York School is difficult to characterize because it contains a tremendous variety of styles, themes, and methods. And that would be all. Thank you. So, I hope guys you have learned from this my discussions.